Foodborne diseases are a real danger. Every year, hundreds, if not thousands of people are rushed to the hospital because their food has been contaminated. Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, botulism. What are they and what foods might be contaminated with them? Don't worry, we've got your back. Today, we're going to teach you how to escape a deadly meal. As you can see, I am knee-deep in files and completely overwhelmed by all this information and dust. Obviously, I really need to clean this place up. Anyways, this is where we keep all our investigations, and today we are going to talk about... Hold on. No, not that one. Yes! Deadly foodborne diseases. Now, you probably know of someone who's been contaminated, or even worse, you may have experienced it yourself. Now, we all know that food can be such a treat, but it could also land you in the emergency room. So today, we're gonna share with you how you can stay safe. And we're also gonna show you a couple of horror stories, and we're going to do that through the sheer power of reenactment. The following stories are inspired by true events. Any resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental. And for the record, I am definitely not a doctor. Next, please.
Oh, I need some help.
Okay, what's the problem? Oh, well, what did you eat?
Roja. Indian Roja. The ones with the deep-fried prawn fritters and the cuttlefish. And all that peanut sauce?
Yeah, I know that one. How was it? Was it yummy? Sorry, force of habit. How do you feel?
Terrible stomach pains. Thus, I threw up and feeling really dizzy.
Hold on. Yes, I knew it. There was a similar case to yours back in Singapore in 2009. 2 people died, 150 people fell ill, and they had similar symptoms, you know, the nausea and the stomach cramps.
I did too.
Well, it says here that back then it was because the cuttlefish was contaminated with the Vibrio felicis. Just have a look at the graphic on the screen. Anyway, did you have any of the cuttlefish? Because I think that's the reason.
So Vibrio is a bacteria that lives in seawater and can contaminate anything that lives in seawater, usually the seafood that we eat, like the mussels, the clams, cuttlefish, cockles, and so forth. So it is a very well-known cause of gastroenteritis, which is diarrhea and vomiting illness in people who have eaten seafood.
So, according to this file, the problem with this specific horror story is actually a very common issue: cross-contamination.
So cross-contamination in the kitchen is a major cause of food poisoning. You have food that's raw, that contaminates food that is cooked, and that's what causes a major outbreaks of food poisoning anywhere in the world. So let's take the case of Roja, which contains a variety of fruits. You might also have a sauce, but also you might have something like a cuttlefish. Now, cuttlefish, by definition, because it's a marine product, will have bacteria, and therefore you can think of a situation where you cut the cuttlefish firstly on a chopping board, and immediately then start cutting your fresh fruits, which are by definition normally quite sterile, and therefore you have a cross-contamination of the products.
Treating the symptoms shouldn't actually be that hard if you seek medical attention. So please, don't wait until you're blue in the face before you go to the hospital. But how can you actually prevent this? How do you potentially avoid a deadly disease?
The 3 telltale signs of making sure that you don't fall into food poisoning is: inspect the shop or the property that you're eating at. Does it look clean? Does it look healthy? Secondly, make sure that there is no symptoms of cross-contamination where you see the person cutting a raw food and a cooked food at the same point in terms of meat and poultry products. Lastly, look at how the food is stored. Is there a cold cabinet for foods that are susceptible to grow bacteria? Is there a hot cabinet for keeping things hot? And I think these are the 3 simple tenets that I would look for to make sure that you minimize your risk of food poisoning.
I think it's time to investigate our next deadly meal. Okay, So this is actually a preventable disease, and there's even a vaccine for it. But it doesn't mean that it's been eradicated. No, sir. Once in a while, it does pop up back in the news, and when that happens, ooh, you'll get scared. So now, it is time for another one of those dramatic horror stories. Sir? Sir, are you okay? Can I help you?
I think I have a sickness that starts with H.
So hives? Headache? Hepatitis?
I think I'm suffering from hepatitis.
Okay. Wow, well, this is strange. First, let's investigate hepatitis. This disease affects your liver.
Hepatitis A and hepatitis B are both viruses that attack the liver. Hepatitis A is transmitted through food, whereas hepatitis B is transmitted through blood products as well as through sexual intercourse.
And when you have hepatitis A, you would have jaundice, abdominal pain, fever, and nausea, and you would probably feel tired.
So hepatitis A virus is present throughout the world, and the contamination and infection is through eating seafood, especially shellfish, and notably like clams, mussels, as well as oysters.
Sir, and tell me, how do you know that you have hepatitis?
You see, I read this news piece on how oysters and shellfish and the whole works could give you hepatitis A. And I just returned from an oyster buffet.
Okay, sir, how much did you eat?
I lost count. It was a lot.
So upon exposure to hepatitis A virus, you can expect an incubation period of any time from a few days up to 30 days before you manifest the symptoms of hepatitis A infection.
At least a few days after contamination. That doesn't seem the case for our paranoid patient. He probably just ate too much. But how can we avoid this foodborne disease?
To avoid getting hepatitis A, firstly, you should be careful when you are eating shellfish. Always ensure that your shellfish are properly cooked. If you are insistent on eating shellfish that could not be completely cooked or even raw, then you should consider vaccination. The vaccination for hepatitis A is very easily done and confers a high degree of protection of up to over 90%.
Now that we're on the subject of seafood, did you know that seafood doesn't just potentially cause food poisoning, but it can harbor flesh-eating bacteria?
So when you say flesh-eating bacteria, it doesn't actually mean that the bacteria is eating the flesh. What it means is that it's describing a group of bacteria that can penetrate into this subcutaneous plane, and this bacteria is found in seawater.
To put things into perspective, this kind of flesh-eating bacteria can only infect you if you get bitten by an infected crab or if you cut yourself when you're shucking an infected clam. So please be careful when you're handling seafood.
The only way to contract it is through an injury in the skin. But if you were to eat crabs or eat prawns, and you're talking about infection through the intestinal tract, then that is not possible.
So as you can see, food can be dangerous even if you don't eat it.
But honestly, there is no reason to panic. Eating seafood is really not that dangerous. Just be a little cautious and you'll enjoy it for life. Coming up, should you be scared of eating raw eggs or undercooked chicken or even meat? Don't worry, we have the answers. And we'll show you the germiest places in your kitchen. Food poisoning is very serious and potentially deadly. But fear not, we are on a mission to teach you how to escape from a deadly meal. So far, we've learned about cross-contamination and how to stay safe when eating seafood. Now, let me go back to my deadly food disease files.
Oh, this one is interesting, and it has to do with a beauty tip gone wrong.
I think I made a huge mistake.
I'm sorry, what?
I made a huge mistake.
You didn't kill someone, did you?
What? No, but I feel like dying though. Like my stomach keeps cramping up and I keep needing to go to the toilet.
Number one or number two?
Number two.
Oh dear, you must have eaten something to set that off. Okay, don't worry, just tell me what you ate and I'm gonna try to help you.
Okay, I ate raw egg white.
What? Why?
Well, I read at this beauty blog, it said that consuming raw egg whites could help give you better skin. And then I got a bit hungry, so I ate raw chicken because, you know, raw diets are trending. Yeah.
Honey, raw eggs and raw chicken are never a good idea. Ever.
Judging from her symptoms, it looks like the culprit is either the infamous Salmonella or the equally bad E. coli. They both have similar symptoms: nausea, diarrhea, cramps, and fever, but they are in fact different.
We do see quite a fair bit of Salmonella infections presenting as diarrhea. E. coli, on the other hand, is a bacteria more commonly associated with urinary tract infections rather than gastrointestinal infections. The diseases of E. coli and Salmonella are both spread through very similar routes. If you eat dairy products, you take eggs, you take meat, you can get infections with these two organisms if they are not cooked properly.
So what can we fragile human beings do to avoid salmonella? And while we're at it, what can we do to avoid E. coli? Let's cover all the bases first, shall we?
It is advisable that you should always consume milk that is pasteurized. The eggs should not be eaten raw, or you may want to consume pasteurized eggs. And if you are going to be eating meats, ensure that your meats are properly cooked. If you're eating vegetables, make sure your vegetables are washed.
Most of the food that we eat at home is usually prepared in your own kitchen. But did you know that your kitchen is potentially the source of most foodborne illnesses? That's right. I am sorry to say your kitchen is gross. And we prepared a list of the germiest places in your kitchen. The rubber spatula that you use to bake your favorite batch of cookies, probably chock full of E. coli, yeast, and mold.
So remember, folks, make sure you clean your spatula thoroughly.
The blender. Usually your blender has a rubber ring that holds the blade in place. That's called the gasket. But it's also the prime breeding ground for Salmonella, E. coli, yeast, and mold. So make sure that from time to time you disassemble that gasket and you wash it with some warm, soapy water. Can openers can be a godsend, but be careful, because if a can opener isn't cleaned properly, well, you guessed it, it could be laden with Salmonella, E. coli, and mold. The knife block that houses our ever-essential kitchen knives. But have you ever cleaned it? Have you even looked inside it? Well, you should, because the knife block has been known to be a nice little breeding ground for yeast and mold. Now, the best way to clean the knife block is to turn it upside down before washing it with warm, soapy water. And if you have a bristle brush, you can use that to get nice and deep into those nooks and crannies.
And there's more to come. Germs are hiding where you least expect them. But if you take the proper precautions, you'll be just fine. There's no need to go mad looking for germs. Oh, by the way, speaking of mad...
Oh, no, he's here again. All right, what is it this time?
Mad cow disease. I had this huge, lovely steak, and after that, I started to forget things. I read about the mad cow disease. It basically attacks the nervous system and the brain. So I can't remember things now. The only thing I can remember is that beautiful, tender, juicy, flavorful steak. I'm feeling mad.
Something we can agree on.
So mad cow disease actually refers to a condition known as bovine spongiform encephalopathy. This is an illness that affects cows. But what we associate mad cow disease is the disease that affects the humans. Now, this condition is actually spread by something known as prion. A prion is a protein that is infectious, but it's different from a virus and it's different from a bacteria. So to contract the disease, you need to eat an animal that is infected with prions. And the prions go for the nervous system. So the highest risk is if you eat the tissues of the nervous system, like the brain or spinal cord of an animal that's infected. Nonetheless, if you were to eat other organs in the animal, you pose yourself at risk as well.
That sounds scary. But how safe are we?
Prions disease are really rare. They happen only in certain countries. And in Singapore, we don't have a risk of getting prion disease. The incidence is about 1 per 1 million persons per year.
Up next, can a simple-looking baked potato be carrying a deadly disease? What are the top 4 germiest places in your kitchen? Stay with us and we'll teach you how to stay safe. Do you know how to escape from a deadly meal? Don't be afraid, we're here to help. From salmonella to hepatitis A, there are plenty of foodborne diseases out there.
So there are even more cases, and some of them are pretty scary. So my interns, I have gone through them all, and I found some of the scariest, most shocking, and weirdest cases. And this one, this is the oddest I have ever seen.
Hi, doctor. I don't know why, but I've been having some problem swallowing. And there's these cramps that won't seem to go away.
Okay, so may I ask what you've eaten and... Oh, we've got a half-eaten baked potato. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So there are reports of baked potatoes causing this condition, botulism. However, these reports are extremely rare. Botulism is a disease that is caused by a bacteria is able to produce a toxin that damages our nerves. So this bacteria is actually found in soil, and therefore your vegetables may be contaminated with it. So if you eat food that is contaminated with this bacteria, and then the toxins enter your intestines and then go into your circulation, what you will present with is weakness, and the weakness classically starts from the face and goes down to your legs. But once it goes down into your chest, then that's when the big problems happen, because it affects your breathing. And when you cannot breathe properly, you may be hooked onto a ventilator to sustain your life.
How can we stay safe and avoid this potentially deadly disease?
It's important to always make sure that your food is washed clean before you eat it, and preferably you should cook your food. So essentially, baked potato is safe to eat. If you were to cook your potatoes and eat them immediately after cooking, you will be safe. Or if you stored them properly in the fridge and you reheated them before eating, you will be safe as well.
Diseases are brewing in your food everywhere. And with that, it's time to go back to the ickiest place of all, your kitchen. The fridge. Now, beyond the food, the fridge contains different compartments. One for meat, one for seafood, one for vegetables, and fruit produce. But if you put the meats and seafood above the produce, the raw juices could potentially drip down and cause cross-contamination, which leads to Listeria, Salmonella, and E. coli. Ooh, and remember, folks, clean that fridge. Now. The kitchen sink is where you clean your produce. But all the food particles left from soaking your dishes or washing your plates, they can be a breeding ground for illness-causing bacteria, like Salmonella and E. coli.
Remember, always wash your sink after washing your dishes.
The sealed container that you're using to pack your lunch might actually be packing a whole load of salmonella, yeast, and mold, especially along the seal or any grooves around the container.
You know what to do. Clean every groove or replace your containers from time to time.
The germiest places of all in the kitchen? Your hands. That's right, you are probably the leading cause of your food being contaminated by a variety of bacteria. So what do?
Wash those hands. That's right. Scrub them, scrub them, scrub them.
Yes, there are some frightening diseases out there, and I'm getting scared just going through these cases. But mostly just scared because I found potato chips and old cheese in there. Who archives that kind of stuff? Ugh. It's time for yet another contamination story, and I have got just the thing.
After eating deli sandwiches, I think I'm infected with listeria.
Listen, sir, how many times are you gonna do this?
Oh, please, please. I'm serious, please.
Yeah, right.
I looked up the symptoms of listeria. And you feel like vomiting after eating deli meat, you're infected with listeria.
Okay, how many sandwiches did you eat?
4.
Deli meats and listeria. That's interesting, but what's the link?
The
Essentially, anybody who eats food that is not properly cooked can get Listeria infection. Listeria is a bacteria. Actually, its real name is Listeria monocytogenes. It causes a condition called listeriosis. Now, this bacteria is found in water and in soil and can contaminate the foods that we eat, the vegetables that we eat, dairy products, as well as poultry. Now, Listeria causes a few symptoms: diarrhea, vomiting, high fever, or it can present with just sepsis. Sepsis means you get fever, muscle aches, joint pains, and you start feeling very sick. But the ones who will suffer the most will be children as well as the elderly. Pregnant women are also extremely vulnerable because the bacteria is able to cross the placenta and infect the fetus. And in some cases, you can even get fetal death while the lady is pregnant as well. So I think one should still be careful about how they prepare the food and make sure that they come from a clean source.
Strangely, there's a food item that is potentially contaminated, but most people ignore the danger because it looks so harmless. I'm talking about ice.
Ice is a highly potentially contaminated commodity, especially if you go out of a safe country like Singapore. But in many countries of the world, water is not potable when you make ice. So I had the worst diarrhea in my life in a 5-star hotel in a country that's nameless because I drank a drink with ice. I mean, I have gone to the stage, rather embarrassingly, to pull out the piece of ice from a drink or ask the waiter not to put ice on my drink. So therefore, ice, you need to be very, very careful when you travel because ice is a highly contaminatable product.
Whew! That's enough scary stories for today. But before we go, here are 5 tips to escape potential food poisoning.
Keep uncooked meats, poultry, and seafood separate from vegetables, fruits, cooked foods, and ready-to-eat foods. Wash hands, knives, countertops, and cutting boards after handling and preparing uncooked foods. Consume perishable and ready-to-eat foods as soon as possible. Thoroughly cook raw food from animal sources, such as meat, poultry, or seafood. And don't leave eggs, meats, poultry, seafood, or milk for extended periods of time at room temperature.
Food gives you life, but it can also take it away. So stay alert. It all boils down to how we prepare our food and how fresh the ingredients are. So cook your food thoroughly and avoid raw meats. The high temperatures can tend to kill off most of the bacteria and parasites, making your food safe for consumption. Now, I know we can't control everything that we eat, but we can try to make sure that the odds are in our favor. So stay safe and bon appetit.